Jacques, welcome to Millionaire University. I am stoked to have you here today. And I was just telling you that I have seen your ads for the very thing that you do, the very thing that you sell. So I'm like somewhere in your target demographic for one of your many businesses. I don't know if it's many, but one of your two that I know of businesses. Thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to pick your brain and share all the things that you have done and achieved with our listeners.
Thanks, Kirsten. It's an honor to be here as well. You mentioned the word stoked. I'm stoked as well. So excited to get into this.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times we like to just kind of share the story so that it gives us some frame of reference, but your story is literally the thing that we're also going to teach about today and help other people understand the type of business model they can build with online courses. So why don't you give us some reference point on what I believe from the research I've done is one of your most successful endeavors, and anything you want to share that's kind of led to that moment of what that program is. Just give people the backstory.
Oh yeah, just set me up and I can take it anywhere I want to take
Yeah.
it, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot going on. I have two very distinct brands and that's it. So the biggest one, the one I'm most known for would be Piano in 21 Days. It's been around for now 12 years, which is just crazy to think about. I started it back in 2013. And really, the genesis for that idea was not because I was like a world class pianist or world class piano teacher. I was an electrical engineer by day, and my whole life I wanted to be an engineer. Uh, Ever since first grade, when I was turning in my math tests early, my teacher said, "Hey, you should be an engineer one day." Before I even knew what that was, or maybe thought it had something to do with trains. So my whole life pointed toward being an engineer, and I didn't have a problem with that. But I picked up a book my senior year of college, my last year of engineering school, called The 4 Hour Work Week. You may have heard of it by Tim Ferriss,
Yep.
and that really opened my eyes to. It gave me a paradigm shift on what being an entrepreneur could be, because up until that point in time, I thought it meant a lot of headaches, big team, a lot of upfront funding, whether that's debt or outside investors, brick and mortar presence, 80-hour work weeks. And so it never appealed to me. I was going to go work for somebody for 40, 50 years, be an engineer and live a good life. But reading that book, I was like, oh my gosh, these things that he is able to do, the author Tim Ferriss, the things that he is able to do because of the type of business that he created are amazing. All the adventures he was able to do, all the time, all the time off, working while traveling, but not working a crazy amount, appealed to me. So for the first time in my life, I was like, okay, I want to pursue that. But I already had my job lined up. I was about to graduate. So I went to work and I worked for 8 years as an electrical engineer, all the while trying to create some sort of side business in the with the inspiration from Tim Ferriss. So
Mm.
I tried several things. Piano was just kind of a hobby. I wasn't a piano teacher. I wasn't teaching anybody piano, so it was not my first idea. I tried several things that never made a dollar. There were blogs, there were apps, there were physical products, and one day in early 2013, I was procrastinating. I didn't have kids yet. I was married at the time. Come home from a long day of work, and felt like I should be working on whatever business I was trying to create at the time, but I found myself procrastinating by playing the piano. And so it just kind of hit me one day. I was like, oh, like if I don't really want to do anything else, but this in moments like this, I wonder if there's something here. I wonder if there's a business here. And so that's how I got the idea for an online piano course originally. And it was far from an overnight success, but eventually years later it became successful years after getting the idea initially.
Yeah. Well, they say that overnight success only takes like 10 years, right? So, I mean, you were on track for what it usually has to take. Okay, I love this story so much and I love your background. I think it's super fascinating. I was like jotting down some questions because something that you mentioned is you didn't really know how to facilitate that freedom yet that Tim Ferriss talks about in his book, and so you stayed on that traditional path. I think a lot of our listeners resonate with that, where you can even learn a lot of different things. You can read it in books, you can hear it on podcasts like this, and it can still feel like this unknown and it feels less safe because it's not known. And so we still kind of stay on that trajectory of safety. It's not even the ideal or what we want, but it's at least known and it's comfortable and it's a little bit predictable. It's not really, but it feels like it is. And so I think a lot of people will understand you kind of following that path for 8 years before really pivoting, and obviously it sounds like you're probably trying things throughout that 8 years too, right? As you were working as an electrical engineer, it wasn't just like do this and forget all about what you read in the book. It was just kind of trying to find that magic nugget, that thing that was actually going to click.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned like the safety and like, being scared to like do the thing and you're listening to podcasts and whatnot. One thing I've been thinking about lately because we recently just got back from a 4-month RV trip, something I've
Mm.
always wanted to do. And so we've been on the road for the past 4 months, just got back about a week ago. And I consumed all the content around RV lifestyle, driving them, setting them up, taking them down. I even had mentors that had done it that I talked to. But until I actually did it and started doing it, um, I wasn't good at it. And
Mm-hmm.
like our very first day and night on the whole trip was absolutely terrible. There was all kinds of problems. I got a screw in a tire. My daughter swallowed a couple of magnets, had to take her to the emergency room. I didn't set up something correctly. And the next morning, my daughter's fine, by the way. The next morning, something I did caused the entire rig to like crash to the ground.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
like I felt like I was prepared as I could be, but because I hadn't done the thing yet, I wasn't any good at it. And sometimes it just takes doing the thing
Mm-hmm.
to start to get good at it. And by the end of the 4 months, like I feel like I'm a pro at it now because I've been doing it. And so I look at like starting a business, online business similarly. And you said it very nicely is that we could listen to all the podcasts, read all the books, take all the courses, but until you actually start doing it yourself, you're not going to be very good at it.
Yeah. Well, and that even like shifting from consumer and the person who's learning into the actual creator of an online program, which I know we're going to dive into, something that I was thinking about is it might have been a more natural path too for you to create a course on something like electrical engineering or like how to build an electrical engineering business, something that feels even still more known, right? And so it was probably such a weird curveball for you to say, like, you know what, this is the thing I'm doing. This is the thing I'm actually really excited about that helps alleviate some of the stress. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's been staring me in the face the whole time. And with that brings the question of, because I think you even say this on your site, like, and you mentioned this to me, you're not this concert pianist. You wouldn't consider yourself the best pianist in the entire world. But when it comes to getting into a position where you were then able to create a course about that, start teaching that, that's a limiting belief a lot of times people have too. They don't know enough, or they're not the expert, the absolute go-to pro on that thing. So what was that journey like for you in saying like, how am I going to go from I love piano, I'm pretty good at piano, into, you know what? I'm going to go a totally different lane and teach this to other people.
That is such a phenomenal question. I've been on tons of podcasts and talked about my story many times, and I don't know that anybody's quite said like, "Why didn't you create a course on electrical engineering?" That sounds so boring. By the way,
Yeah.
I wasn't an especially good electrical engineer either. I didn't hate my job, but it was it paid the bills and whatnot. So I think the key is that I did know, like I did so many things wrong, but I knew I needed to have like a unique selling proposition, like something
Hmm.
that would make me stand out from the crowd. And so I didn't want to make like a generic electrical engineering course or even a generic piano course. And so part of that realization I had when I was playing my piano is that I do have a fairly unique story as it relates to piano, and the way that my story and then the way that I play now is a little unique. And I just was wondering, like, I wonder if other people have similar stories to me and want to and don't know this other way to play piano and would want to know it. So it was a theory that I had, and it turns out it was right. A lot of people do want to play this way. So not only am I not the world's greatest pianist, I was never very good at all, right? So not only am I not the top one, I'm not that great compared to other people. Just in general, I started taking piano lessons when I was 5 years old, and I took piano lessons for 12 years. But I hated it. Like I was never into it. I did it because my parents wanted me to take the lessons. And so after 12 years, I realized I could only play, like if somebody asked me to play piano, I only knew how to play 2 songs after 12 years of piano lessons.
I
And that's
feel that so
because,
hard. That's me too.
yeah,
It
you
was
did you
like
take piano lessons
2.
as a kid?
Yes, and I think I wanted to, but it just wasn't it didn't click. I'm an auditory learner, And so I still to this day, if I had to read music, it would be painful. So, and I'm sure that's also why I've seen your ads for your course too, because I've looked into that and I've been curious about that. I would still love to this day to be more proficient in piano. I'm a songwriter, I'm a singer, and it just feels like it would be really nice to have that skill set to complement that. But it was not a natural thing for me. It was not in my wheelhouse. So it's funny. I tried to take piano as an adult, still didn't land. My brain still was not able to learn in the traditional way. So continue on your thought. I'm sorry to
Mhm.
interrupt, but I also would love to go deeper into that to help understand what that value proposition is and why it stood out so much because it did fit a specific need. So sorry, continue on.
No, I'm glad. So I'm glad to know that you personally understand what I'm talking about. It sounds like you
Yeah.
might be my next student. But taking piano lessons growing up, like it was all about learning to read sheet music, and then when you want to learn a new song on the piano, you get the sheet music and then you learn the song. And the problem with that is that because I wasn't super into it, I was just parroting back what somebody else had written on a piece of paper. And in 12 years of piano lessons, I never understood music at all, right?
Hmm.
At all. I didn't even know what a chord was. Now, some of that's on me because I would take my lesson, I wouldn't practice, and so progress was very, very slow. But I didn't understand the concept of the piano and the concept of music at all because I was just a robot parroting back what somebody else had written on a piece of paper. What happened was went on a retreat with my church at 17 years old, and there was a piano where we were at, and people there knew that I took piano lessons. They asked me to play, and that's the moment I realized I only knew how to play two songs because I played a song. They weren't very impressed because it was some old classical piece that 17-year-olds don't appreciate, and they're like, "Can you play anything else?" I played one more song, and then that was it. I had nothing else after that. But another guy came up after me and started playing songs, and he started playing like modern songs, pop songs, and he played a lot of things. And so I sat down with him that night to try to understand what he was doing because I had no I guess my guess was he memorized a bunch of sheet music, but that wasn't the case. What he did was he figured out the chords to these popular songs and then knew how to improvise around the chords to make it sound like the song.
Hmm.
So I took that information. My mind was blown, by the way. Like I couldn't believe that that was a possibility. And I immediately quit my piano lessons and pursued this other way to play piano. And for the first time in my entire life, I was enjoying playing the piano because I was
Hmm.
playing songs that I enjoyed, that people I knew enjoyed, and it wasn't a chore to learn how to play them. And I was understanding music and music theory for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And so I just casually played, for the next several years through college and whatnot. And it was just a little hobby I had on the side. I didn't play every day or anything, but um, the realization I had was, okay, I have this story about how painful the traditional model was for me, but I got through it and I found a different way that is not mainstream, right? And so that was the realization is like, I wonder if other people are like this. Like, obviously, piano lessons do work for a lot of people. They didn't work for me, they didn't work for you. They don't work for a lot of people as well, right? So the people that are just like naturally musically gifted and inclined and just like really like to nerd out on the technical details, like that's who the traditional piano lessons are for. And that's great. I'm not saying we should do away with traditional piano lessons, but it makes it inaccessible for the vast majority of people, just your everyday person that just wants to play. And so once I decided I wanted to teach this way, I had to kind of refine my method and figure out how to teach it to other people without sheet music, just using this whole chords and improvisation approach. So it was really that part of my story that I figured could help me stand out in terms of making a piano course.
Well, that's incredible. I absolutely love this as obviously somebody who struggled with the exact same thing and it resonates with me so much. I have a husband who can play like that, who can play the way you just described, how he can sit down and he can be like, okay, well, what are the chords? And then he'll play it. I'm like, how do you know this song? We've never practiced this song. And he's really good at just instinctively being able to do that because he figured that out, and he did learn music theory. And so anybody who's listening who doesn't have any musical background, it's like being taught it's like being told to memorize the script, but never being taught how to actually like read or being taught how to understand what it is that you're reading. And I feel like I went through a lot of life like this as a learner and just everything's taught very traditionally and very I mean, we're all taught the exact same way and we all learn differently. So I think that's really powerful that you found that. So I'm curious about, how did you tap into this? I think this can be a cause of frustration. I know I've experienced as somebody who has learned and acquired skills and then wants to turn around and teach them and help other people, to be able to, number one, learn it differently, gain the skill, become stronger at the thing, but then transmuting that into teaching other people. Did you practice teaching in person? Were you coaching people one-on-one to be able to kind of create this methodology that you could then turn into a program?
Oh, if I had to do it over again, I would have tried to recruit a few people that were interested in learning this way and teach them live, whether in person or over, I guess Zoom probably didn't exist in 2013, but
Skype?
maybe Skype did or something like that, right? I probably would have done that to help validate my curriculum because I had never taught this to anybody. So I went ahead and just made the course, and it took me
Hmm.
like 8 months before I was ready to launch it. And so it did work out eventually, but I think I could have found success a lot faster if I would have gone that route of actually teaching it to real people as quickly as
Hmm.
possible.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's break this down, because I know your other business, something that you do is now you teach people how to have success with their own online courses. And so I want to break down some of your strategy and some of the things you even mentioned so far on the conversation, and just dive a little bit deeper into that. The most recent, your unique value proposition. Like, you need to have that thing that helps you stand out. I have a couple questions with that. I was just sitting here thinking, I specialize in emotional intelligence. It's something that's talked about. I don't see a ton of courses on this, right? It's like there's a lot of mindset courses. There's a lot of programs that go into very specific outcomes when you have mindset shifts, emotional intelligence. But do you feel like the unique value proposition, if you kind of lead with a story, that's always going to be your best bet? Like, your own personal transformation should be the root of the way that you're going to sell that thing? Or is it a matter of, because, for yourself, you weren't the best at it, so it was your story and your unique way of teaching it. What are some other ways? Like, how do we develop that unique value proposition?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is certainly part of it because
Hmm.
I think that when you want to learn something from somebody, it's nice to know that they've kind of had similar struggles that you've had, because then that places you as the absolute perfect guide to lead them to where they want to be. So I
Hmm.
think that's certainly part of it, maybe not the whole thing, because you have to, just because I struggled, um, I still have to have that like special sauce of what's going to be the key to get them to where they want to be. So I feel like it's like the story, your background is extremely important, combined with your own special sauce,
Hmm.
is really the two parts to it. So for me, the special sauce was really like chords and improvisation, and then learning really quickly in non-musical language, right? So I teach piano like an engineer teaches piano, not like a music teacher teaches piano. So
Yeah.
that's my special sauce, and that's what makes me unique. If you go to YouTube and you just type in like piano lessons or how to learn piano, there's going to be an unbelievable amount of results, right? And a lot of them are going to be more generic, and a lot of them are going to teach things just like everybody else teaches things. But I come at it with a much different approach, and so that can be refreshing when somebody finds my video on YouTube. And that's the number one way people find me, is just through organic YouTube videos. And they start to get a sense of my special sauce. So I think that ropes people in first. And then they dive deeper and learn my story. And then when those two things come together, that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So you need to find that intersection of, how do I take this thing that I'm good at, but like, how do I convey that to people? Of, how is it going to stand out, be different? How is what I'm teaching a little different approach to how other people might be teaching this thing? And because I think in a world full of noise, and I was kind of like dancing around this, but just to even get more direct with it, like, you have to know your audience, but you also have to know your competitors. You have to know your niche a little bit, right? You have to see, well, if there's nobody even talking about this thing, I don't really have to niche down too much. But if there are a lot of people teaching piano, a lot of people teaching mindset or online business principles, marketing, you have to find that specialty. Otherwise, you're just going to blend in with a bunch of other people. So, what does that really look like? I mean, it doesn't take much now to do some research, but what do you usually recommend to people who come to you and they're wanting to learn how to create this? Where do they typically start? Is it right there in the research within your industry, or is it like looking inward at what the thing is that you should provide?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. I think you look at what else is out there and see how you would be different than the mainstream approach.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did in 2013, and everything that exists. I certainly wasn't the first online piano course. Everything that seemed to exist at the time was these like $20 a month memberships where they threw just a lot at you, a lot of training. They would market it as like, oh, there's 60 hours of video content and there's all this sheet music. It was just a lot at you for a very cheap price. And so I went the other direction. I went very minimal, right?
Mm.
21 lessons. Each lesson is pretty short. So the overall content was very short. I'm going to charge you a one-time fee. You buy this course with the promise of the outcome, not all the features that are included, but you pay this price to get the outcome, to learn how to play piano in 21 days.
Yeah.
So that's the process I went through, and it would be similar today. The only difference today is it's 12 years later, and there's just a lot more out there. There's just a lot more out there. So you probably have more competitors to look through, but it very much depends on your niche, right? I'm in a very like popular niche of piano, but maybe you're so niche down that like just your niche itself is good enough to be the special sauce, because that would be the only thing out there. One client that I had, for example, Spencer Russell, teaches toddlers to read, very young kids. So there's a lot of people out there teaching kids to read, right? I mean, Hooked on Phonics has been around for a very, very long time, but he came at this a little differently in that he targeted even younger kids. So he has you start as young as 2 years old, and he put together his special sauce very, very simply and easily, and a little different than people normally teach. And he's got 3 parts to his framework. And so, for example, the first part is the letter sounds. He says, do not teach your kid the names of the letters first. Don't teach them to learn A, B, C, D when they see those characters. Teach them what the sound is. When they see the letter A, they should say ah, not A. When they see
Mm.
B, when they see the letter B, they should say buh, not B. And that's the very first step to getting a kid to read. So there's little things like that he teaches differently than the mainstream that works really well, and works so well it can work for even younger kids as well. His brand is called Toddlers Can Read.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we've kind of mentioned this a little bit, and we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty, but that is your second business, is teaching people basically how to replicate your success. So with everything we just said, I'm curious what your unique value proposition is with the online course business, because that is a very, very dense niche. Like tons of people are selling how to create courses. So for you, is that, I mean, obviously the piece of your story, you had your piano course, you had massive success with that. You found kind of your own methodology within that of specialty and whatever. What else kind of goes into your messaging? And this is getting meta, because I know this is the very thing that we're like talking about, teaching, promoting. But what makes you stand out in that space aside from your own story? Like what's your UVP
Yeah.
there?
So I guess, when you put it that way, I'm in 2 very crowded niches, right?
Yeah.
Like teaching people about courses, teaching people about piano. So with the second brand, there's certainly my story. That's a huge part of it, because I am somebody that has had success, several $1 million brought in with a piano course. And the big key about my story and the differentiator between myself and others is that it's in a non-money making niche, right?
Mm.
I created a very successful online course in a niche that doesn't teach people how to make money, right? And so a lot of the people teaching course stuff, their success has come from teaching people to make money. And so you can be successful with courses in hobby niches, and my business is an example of that. And so when somebody especially is looking to create a course in a more hobby niche that doesn't teach people to make money, that part of my story really resonates with them.
Mm.
And so that's like more the story side. And then in terms of like tactical stuff, one thing I really try to lean into is that I'm going to help you create a course business and not just a course, because
Mm.
that's one area that people often get wrong. Is they think, okay, I'm going to make an online course, so I need to just make an online course. But there's so much more to it than that to be successful, to have an actual business. We've got to have marketing and traffic and build an audience. We've got to have a selling mechanism. We've got to put together a really good offer. We have to have testimonials. There's a lot of components to running an entire business. And many people can make a course, right? If you are really good at something, really good at teaching something, then you could probably put together a really good course.
Hmm.
But that's just one piece to the puzzle of having a successful course business. So
Yeah.
just to wrap it up, that's why I always say, like, I'm going to help you create a course business and not just a course.
Okay, I love that. Good clarity. One of the things I actually noted down when we first started talking is this B2B versus B2C, which is something you just kind of tapped into. That's different about yours. You're teaching people how to, well, not everybody's creating hobby courses. I assume that there are people who come into your programs and they teach people marketing or sales strategies or things that do generate income. But I'm curious for you, do you feel like that is, I think people have the belief system that it's harder to sell things that are not generating income or teaching people how to generate income. After being in that space for so long, like I have taught people how to market, how to create funnels, all the things. And there's a part of me that is just like so excited to lean into more of the B2C for our listeners. That's business, like business to customer. We're not selling business to other business owners. We're selling an end product to a user, to a consumer. So like a piano course or a cooking course, something like that. In my case, it's emotional intelligence and it's not just for entrepreneurs. So what's your opinion on that? Is it harder to sell? Is it easier to sell B2C? I know that's kind of the lane that you went into. What are you finding among your students and is that even safe to say one's easier or harder than the other?
No, it's not black and white like that, in my opinion. My gut would say, like, in general, maybe it's slightly easier to do the make a money proposition because you can convey real value there, right? If I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
teach you how to build some sort of six-figure business, then you can see a very clear ROI on that, return on investment. So if I have a $2,000 course that's going to teach you to make $100,000 a year, it's like direct ROI. We see how
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Whereas if I'm teaching you to learn something like piano, I have to do a better job of conveying that ROI, that conveying that that dream outcome you're looking for is worth the money that we're charging for it. But at the same time, I mean, not to say that just teaching people to make money is easy either, because there's
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of other headaches that come with that. But I think it really comes down to what you want to do and what you're passionate about, and then what you're gifted with that you're able to teach other people. And then if there's a market for that thing as well. So I wouldn't say definitively one path or the other. It's more about uh, what's gonna work best for you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And like what resonates with you? What do you feel the most qualified? I mean, how do you factor that in with qualification? Because I was just thinking about this morning. There's a lot of people that I come across in the things that I do, the people that I talk to. They have so many big ideas and they are actually some of the best people I know at the thing they do, but they're stuck in that learning loop where they feel like, well, I'm not quite the expert yet. Or I've even gotten into this trap before too, where you can know more than most people that you're ever going to come across, but you still know people who know more. So you don't think that you're qualified. So how do you walk people through that shift to and this kind of plays into even developing your own framework because I'm curious about that in a more technical sense. How do you transmute that into seeing, oh, I do know enough. I actually do have enough that I can teach and provide a curriculum for this.
Well, I think there'll almost always be people better at you or that know more than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you are the top person on the planet out of 8 billion people, then I think it's safe to say statistically there'll always be people better than you. But the key is, as long as there are people that you can teach this thing to, that are behind you in one way or another, right? So I think my story is a pretty good one. Like, I'm still not a great pianist. Like, I play at my church, and there's several keyboard players at church, and I'm probably the worst one, if I'm being honest. Like, there's such talented musicians there. I was just never very musically gifted, but I just took this different approach and reached a different audience with it, and so that's why I found success with it. And so as long as you're a few steps ahead of somebody else, then you can teach them. And then once you get into it and you're starting to teach people, then hopefully you learn and grow. I'm on the sixth version of my piano course. The sixth version is just infinitely better than the first version. And of course, each version was better than the one before. I've gotten better as I've learned from my students what's working, what's not working. I've studied piano more and music theory more to try to understand it better myself. But that's not to say that people didn't buy the first version, because they
Mm-hmm.
did and got results from it. So I think that you've got to start, and there's never going to be a perfect time where you're now the expert and now qualified, as long as hopefully you've gotten the transformation yourself, um, and have some experience in that particular niche. then you just start going down the path. And you don't have to start by making a course. You can start making content. You can start getting people together to teach them live and just start going down that path.
Yeah. I think the key to what you just said is like there's power in just the peace of mind of knowing there can be iterations. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
say I have to have everything figured out now and this is the end all be all course that I'm creating and I can never change it because it might make people mad if I have new versions of it, or if I add to it, then all those people might not be happy they didn't get the best product. There's also technical ways around that too to give that lifetime access to new iterations, but I think from a creative standpoint, knowing you don't have to have all the answers. I think even when you talk about a course business, sometimes we're trying to think of like, how do I fit everything I know into one program, one offer? And you want to have it all mapped out first before you even start with that first initial thing. And there's so much power in just saying, like, what can I teach now? Like, what's a small, simple transformation? There's always room for expansion. We don't have to just have one course for the rest of our lives that stays exactly the same.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of the things I love about digital products and a digital product based business. I've got 2 books on my desk right now that are both pretty popular. Atomic Habits, James Clear, amazing. $100 million Leads, Alex Ramosi. These are physical books, right? When you write a book, you want it to be as near perfect as possible, because they are printing off physical copies of this, and like this book is now in my hands. And sure, you can have like version 2 of the book, but that's not very common. And so you want this to be as perfect as possible. That's not how it is with digital products. We can easily iterate, whether it's the course or like a single YouTube video, right? So let's say that somebody's listening to this and they're inspired and they want to start going down the path of an online course business, and they do things the right way and they try to start building an audience first, and they're going to do that, say, on YouTube, and they want to start making YouTube videos. Well, that first YouTube video you make doesn't have to be perfect, because you can go make another one and then make another one and then make another one. YouTube, it still is my number one traffic platform. And it probably took 30 or 40 videos in before any of them got any traction, you know? And then the same thing with the course. I was able to iterate. And I look back on the first version, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But I made another version, and everybody that had bought the first version got the second version, and so on. And so you can fill in those holes, and you don't even have to make the whole course. Like maybe one lesson is like really tripping people up and you didn't do a good job with it. You can make a new lesson and load it into your platform, no problem.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so I want to get a little more into maybe a linear equation for success with this, because I know you mentioned you really help people build a course business, not just a course, because we could go into just all of the things you need to factor in with creating a course, the logistics, things like that, which are, really important. But can you talk me through, because something you just said is maybe you want to start with content, you start building an audience, which is, I think you said something like what you should be doing. So a lot of people will do what you initially did, which you said you would do it differently now. You might actually get out there and validate the offer, validate the methodology before spending 8 months building out the program. So talk us through kind of a timeline. If you want to build a course business, where do we start in terms of all the pieces that need to be built, from marketing to creation, all of the things?
Yeah, I would look at it as 3 distinct phases. The first phase would be kind of your audience building phase, and that can be very, very fast for some people, and it can be very slow for some people. But my favorite form of audience building would be content marketing, and that's just creating free content on platforms like YouTube or Instagram, or many, many other places, so that we can start giving value and start revealing parts of our secret sauce and our story to people, to start bringing them into our world and getting them interested in more. The second phase would be more of a validation phase. And so that's what I was talking about earlier, how I wish I would have maybe gotten 5 people together to actually teach my curriculum to see if it worked and see what questions they had before I actually recorded an online course. So the audience building part is necessary first, so that we actually have people that can join us on that validation stage. But it doesn't, you just need a small group of people. So you don't need to build a massive audience to be able to get to that validation stage next. So there's several ways you can do the validation. My favorite way is to run a boot camp. It's kind of like what I've been talking about. You get like 5 people together. I do not recommend you give it to them for free, because they will not be invested. I've done things like that for free, and people are really excited at the beginning, but they tend to fizzle out in general.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've never charged for something and you don't have testimonies and case studies, it can also be hard to charge as well. So there are two ways you could go about that seem to work really well. One thing I like to do is offer people like a boot camp. Hey, there's 5 spots for this. I'm going to teach you piano, over the course of 21 sessions. You charge them with the promise that if they show up and they do the work, they'll get a full refund at the end.
Hmm.
And that way they're invested, they have skin in the game, and they also have skin in the game to actually do it. So best case scenario for them, they get all their money back and they've gotten the result. And it's really great. If they don't show up, they don't do the work, then they're out the money. You get to keep the money.
Hmm.
The other way you could do it is have them donate to a charity of their choice. If you make this donation, then you can get into the program. And that shows that you're not necessarily in it for just the money, but they have some skin in the game. They had to put up something. So that's what I would recommend as far as validation, and then really learn from that. And you can do that as many times as you feel necessary before you get onto stage 3, which is the one to many phase, where we actually make the course and start marketing the course. And that's where we really have leverage. We record it one time and then we can sell this digital product and people can take it on their own time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you feel like you run across a lot of people who've started in phase 3, where like what you had done initially, create the program and then try to figure out how to sell it? I think that's the thing that I've seen be the most frustrating in this world, where a lot of people are talking about all the wins and the fun about having an online course business, but they're not putting things in proper order, and there's a lot of frustration and failure.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the top mistakes I see people make, because like I said earlier, you get an idea for an online course, so it just feels natural that the first step is to make the online course, right? So that's the mistake that I made. And I have a coaching program where I help people get off the ground running with this stuff. And a lot of times people will come to me wanting to join the program and they've already made the course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I made it, nobody's buying it, so now I need your help. So that is something I see quite often, and it's understandable. Like I did it too. Like it's a perfectly understandable way to go about things, but it's just, from my experience, it's not the best way to do it.
Yeah. So from there, when you teach, like, what is your philosophy on having, I know we kind of touched on this, like multiple offers, like, because I'm in a season right now of audience building and I can fully acknowledge that. I think we all want to say like, oh, we've done enough, we should just sell the program and people should line up to buy it. You have to be honest with yourself and say like, this is kind of the traction that I'm getting just in trying to provide freebies. But I kind of have a plan and a strategy to at least be monetizing as I'm building that audience, having a low ticket offer, giving some mini transformation. Do you see that still working? Is that something that you teach and have people start with or utilize in their overall strategy for their business?
No, not really. I mean, there's not one perfect right way to do it. So that can absolutely work. But like when you say low ticket, how much are we talking?
Like $100.
Yeah, I mean that's not terrible, but the problem is the math, right? To get any substantial revenue coming in from $100 product, you have to have really big numbers, and you probably have to have a pretty big audience, right? So it can feel like a good way to go about things, just dipping your toes in the water. But I prefer to focus on one offer at a time and try to maximize that one offer. Hopefully minimum of like $300, hopefully even more, so that the math works out better. And I've heard many different gurus say like, focus on one offer until it hits at least $1 million. And I think I would agree with that, to scale that one thing, because I'm a big believer in focus. And when you're trying to sell multiple different offers, that maybe promote multiple different transformations to multiple different types of people, it really muddies the water and takes away your focus. And so my approach would be to focus on one core offer and try to scale that to $1 million if possible. I mean, maybe $500,000 if that feels better. But I think focus is really powerful when it comes to how many offers you have.
Okay, cool. So from there, after you finally launch the program, I know we're in phase 3 with that. And then you've also mentioned, then you have marketing and scaling that. And when you read Tim Ferriss's book, and it was like this appeal of not having to work extensive hours, and there was a fear of, oh, to be an entrepreneur, I felt that way too, by the way. Still sometimes have those fears of, I'm an entrepreneur, it's supposed to be really hard, I'm supposed to have to work a lot of hours. And so for you, what goes into that to be able to maintain that freedom and that flexibility in having a course business? What are the other components you need to put into place?
So I don't know if I'm quite understanding your question. Like you're talking about running a lifestyle business, like being able to have fun, but also run the business.
Yeah, and like for you, because at this point, now that you have kind of two legs of your business, are you utilizing a lot of team members? Do you have a lot of systems in place? And what's the main thing you're spending your time on now the course is done? The audience is there. Is it primarily you're looking at like marketing is where you're spending your time? And how do you keep that? How do you maintain that lifestyle balance that was the ambition in the beginning with like the 4-hour work week? Because I know sometimes we have the hope that it can be that way. And then even with a course business that feels passive, it can still take tons and tons and tons of hours. So I guess I'm asking like, what do you teach and what's the philosophy on maintenance and growth of that while still having the work-life balance?
Yeah, fair. Okay, I think I understand now. I would say there's three components, and you hit on most of them, right? So team, I certainly have a rock star team at this point. So delegation to the team, automation, and systems are all critically important. Um, I didn't have a team at first, and that's not a requirement at the beginning. But as you start to find success, that's really important. The first role I outsourced was customer service because once things really started to take off, which by the way was like 3 years for me, it was like late 2016 where I got my first $10,000 month
Mm.
and things really started to work. But a few months after that, I found most of my time was spent on like customer support, both on like supporting people that already purchased, but then also talking to people interested in purchasing as well. So the first thing I outsourced was that customer service, replying to emails role, and that just freed up hours of my time every day. And fast forward to today, I have like six people on my team. But then, of course, systems are really important as well. My favorite quote of all time is from Atomic Habits. I have this quote written on my board over here. You probably heard it. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you, Kirsten, but I'm a big goal setter, but I have a history of not reaching the majority of those goals.
Yep.
And it's until I like that quote really resonated with me that I realized why that I would rarely reach the goals that I set. It's because I didn't have the underlying systems behind them because you fall to the level of your system. So
Mm.
anytime I set up a goal, I make sure that we have systems in place to get there. The systems themselves are more important than the goal.
Yeah.
Um, so within both businesses, we have team members responsible for things. We have systems, documented systems. We have automations in place. Certainly, there are breakdowns here and there, but those are critical to not having to work like a crazy person. And so when I am working, a lot of my time is spent on content creation because I am the face of both brands and I enjoy it. That's what I like to do. So creating YouTube videos, creating podcasts. I have my own podcast for the online course brand that I've done for like 7 years now. Appearing on podcasts like this. And then the other big thing that I do is I really enjoy working with people individually on the course stuff, right? Not so much piano. Like I don't necessarily want to teach people piano one-on-one or in a group setting, even like live, but I have a group coaching program that I work with people and do spend some time with them. It's not just a passive online course thing because like I've got to do something with my time and I really,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy that. So it's a mix of living in the marketing side, content creation, and then also a little bit on the fulfillment side with the online course clients.
Mm. Yeah. So do you feel like people have the ability to decide for themselves really how much time that they can and are willing to spend in a course business? Because even some of the things you said are optional. Like people might just want to have it be completely 100% passive where you're not in there. Like your piano program is a lot more passive. And so it's just determining from the inside out, like, how do I really want the business to fit into my life? And that's really where you make those decisions and decide how much you're willing to do, how much you're willing to put in so that you can make a certain amount of money and how much you want to offload and outsource. But it's not like a general rule that you're going to spend X amount of hours working a course business because it's really very personal based on how you choose to approach it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't really believe in passive income. I think that it's more like there's active income and then just less active, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum because you could label where Piano in 21 Days sits today as passive income, but I work on it like an hour a week, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like completely hands off. I do a little bit, but it's mostly hands off. And I designed it that way on purpose because, and I don't think we've talked about this, but like, I'm not really passionate about the piano anymore.
Mhm.
It's not something I love anymore. I love the business and I love being able to help people with something I have created, but it's not something I want to spend 40 hours a week on or even
Mhm.
close to that. And so I've designed the business that way to where I only have to spend very minimal time on it because that's where my interest is. And so when we're putting together offers, I think it's really important to make sure you're weighing the two big things, what you're willing to do, and then what's going to work for you, but also what's going to work for your client, and
Mhm.
finding that balance. And when you're getting started, it's okay to lean more heavily into what's going to work for the client, because in the early days, maybe you're willing to make more sacrifices for yourself to get it up and running. But as you look at your vision for where you want this thing to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years, really focusing on where you'd like it to be and start to piece by piece putting the systems, the team, the automations in place to help you get to that point where you want to be with it.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of power in having a bigger picture goal. I mean, I even hesitate to use the word goal, but vision is a word that I really love that you used because I think goals are like hypotheticals and things that we would like to do and all of our big ideas. And I think a vision of knowing, where am I taking this? Like, what's the ideal way that all of this is going to work together? What do I want for my life? And building it from there and starting to think differently about it early on instead of, I look at it as like reactivity versus proactivity in your business. And I think entrepreneurs need to be more proactive. We have a tendency to be very reactive and just kind of flying by the seat of our pants a lot. And I think making that shift can make a huge difference in the longevity and the sustainability of your business. So I love that perspective. It's good to know. And I think a lot of us would love the prescribed set of for you to come on and say, hey, you can build, this would be a good UVP. This is what a lot of people use. You can build a course business and only work 5 hours a week and have total passive income. And I think that's one way and it's not the only way. And you get to build what you want. And I think that's the beautiful thing and the freedom of having a business like this is it gets to be whatever you want.
Yeah, well said.
Yep. Okay, anything else you want to add? And where can people find you to connect with you more if maybe they're interested in piano and maybe they're more interested in how to build a business? If they're on this audience, they're probably most likely interested in the latter. But tell us where we go for both of those things.
You never know. So many people have learning piano on their bucket list.
Yep.
COVID was a good time for my business because all of a sudden everybody's at home looking for things to do. And like I said, so many people have it on their bucket list and we're searching for how to learn piano. And I was there. So pianoin21days.com. And then my other brand is the online course guy, GUY.com. The main free content I have there is my podcast, which is just called the Online Course Show. I started that because I felt very much on an island with this whole online course thing. Like I would hang out with my friends and like they would be talking about their jobs and nobody understood what I was doing. And I knew there were other people around the world doing what I was doing and all kinds of really cool niches. So I created that to as selfishly to be able to reach out to other course creators all over the world and interview them. And so that's been around for like 7 or 8 years now, the online course show. So I'm really proud of that. That would be one of the main ways to connect with me as well.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. I know we've kind of like danced all around the place with understanding both businesses and all the nuance involved in what you're doing now and how people can replicate that success. So thanks for following my lead.
This was a lot of fun. You had some amazing questions and it was truly an honor to be on.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You guys, I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. I love conversations like this. So thank you again, Jacques. It was awesome.
Thank you, Kirsten.